Well, this is new. This is a new scene for us. I like it. I like it. It only took me to drive halfway to your house to realize that we weren't recording in person today. But,
Well, that's just part of the communication style that, we know we're going to do it. It just depends on when and like how we do it. And that's why I kind of like these different styles of it where we're in person. The audio is in person. There's also audio where we're now doing this, and there's going to be audio where people, and there's going to be visuals now. People are going to start to see who we are, which I like, and I think that's going to help us grow.
Yeah.
What's going on, dude?
It's Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. I don't know when this video is actually going to come out, but hopefully soon.
Friday, absolutely. It's a beautiful day in the Northeast.
It is. You see,
the weather's hot.
Speaking of weather in the Northeast, you see that hurricane on the horizon coming our way? We might be getting hit.
Is it our way? Because I know that there was one in Florida that actually just reached out to one of my boys' parents in Naples, and just want to make sure.
There's one in the Atlantic right now. I think it's Category 4 already. They said it's either going to turn out towards the Atlantic or it's coming right for the Northeast, so we could be in for it.
Understood. I think it's going to be a little bit of a cold front too that comes with that. 'Cause I think next week it's going to be back to normal, like 70s, low 70s to high 60s, which I'm a huge fan of. But if it means the rain's going to come, then I got to keep the heat. So
yeah, I mean, I hate the heat.
Usually the heat's the reason why.
It's been brutal out. It's the humidity that's getting me. I mean, the heat's all right, but the humidity's not all right.
No, and like it's weird because like right now it's football season and it's just not a great enjoyable. It's not an enjoyable watch to watch football when it's really, really hot. I don't even know how they do it in the South when it comes to watching football games, because especially college football, where now they changed the rules. But it's an easier game to watch now because it's not college football. It's really NFL football now, just with college players. And it used to be when the first down happens, they have to move the chain so the clock stops. Now the clock doesn't stop. So it continuously runs the way it's supposed to, and there's no 2-minute warning.
Oh.
So things are flying. So like they went from 0 to 100 when it came to the differences in the game, and like where it was on a conservative level where like you're watching a college football game, it's going to take you 4 hours to get through. Now, without stoppages, it should take you around like at least 3 hours more toward a normal football game. So
that's trending all of sports. Pace of play. MLB kind of started it in the minors. Now they're doing this pitch clock in the majors. Now NFL and college football is getting involved. It's a new.
What sport has the best pace of play?
Best pace of play. 25 minutes for a fight isn't too bad.
No, it's interesting. I mean, like unbiasedly too, I think that MMA does have the best pace of play when it comes to it. And I guess pace of play there's got to be an equation to it. Like it's got to be timing versus action versus performance. And like, what are you seeing the best quality of in a given time?
Yeah.
And I would say that has to be MMA. It has to be in a lot of ways. And that's like because I mean, obviously football reigns supreme in this country, but when you look at, there's some football games that you're like, I wish I had some of that time back.
Yeah.
And it's different because we still love it no matter what. I think especially in the NFL, like you're going to look at every game as a game to watch, even if the teams aren't super good, because the talent level is just so high in the NFL. The difference between college football and NFL football, the talent-wise, it's such a different game. So, and I think that's where the comparisons are starting to get a little tighter now, where like it used to be, the discrepancy used to be like a Grand Canyon size gap.
Okay.
If you were a college football player at the Division I level versus an NFL player, playing for the Eagles, the differences were huge. Now, like the players are still just as physical, but the game is played differently in college versus NFL. So that gap is starting to get diminished depending on the position. So, but in MMA, 15 minutes is 15 to 25 minutes. It's pretty jam packed, like 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Like
there's a few fights where you're like, well, I wish I didn't see that one, but majority of the time a lot of these,
it's rare though.
Yeah, it is rare. And a lot of the time it's all these contenders that want to make a name, get the knockout. So people are really hunting for knockouts nowadays. And
Right.
that's the one thing that I complain about a little bit with actually only the UFC, how the UFC runs, because I watch that the most. But
Right.
you get these knockouts in the first round within 5 minutes, and then they got to play the balancing act of dragging on between fights, because obviously they got to get to a certain time point. Their main event is always scheduled for a certain time, so they have to reach that time
Right.
no matter how fast these fights before go. But
Right.
it's great to see action early and get early finishes, but then you got that balancing act of you're kind of sitting around for 20 minutes just not watching anything. So if they can figure out a way to kind of close that gap and figure something out in that way, then I think they're going to be in a really good spot.
I think even that 15 to 20 minutes in between still makes the fight go. You know what I mean? Like, I think that schedule of them, I think because everything obviously there's planes that go awry in any type of sport, but that specifically, I think is very important when it comes to when you look at MMA and like the scheduling of the fights. Like if one fight's if they are projecting these fights to go all 3 rounds, obviously the fight becomes a long fight. The card gets longer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they understand that, like, if it's a one round knockout, it's a second round submission, these things do get mitigated. So that time lapse in between, like in boxing, it's a little different. Like boxing takes a long time to get those guys ready. Like, especially in between, like you see it not, and especially because of 12 rounds, 12 3-minute rounds, it becomes okay, that's done in the 5th round, and then it takes 45 minutes to get the next fight going.
Yeah.
As opposed to like maybe 15 to 20 minutes where the fight's happening. It's going to start getting kicked off in the next 10. Like, get yourself ready. Which, that's a short amount of time.
It is.
Like, that's a short amount of time when you look at it from the fan experience perspective. Like, when you don't have to wait that long, like even in NFL, like when you go to an NFL game, the TV timeouts in between are at least 3 minutes. And then that's where you'd rather watch it at home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, yeah, watching an NFL game at home, in a lot of ways is better than watching it at the field. But obviously you don't get that, like, the vigor, the intensity of watching a football game as a fan in person. We just don't get that. But baseball games, same thing. Baseball games are a little bit easier to watch at home, and depending on your seat, it's easier to watch there.
Yeah.
Like depending on where you're located in the stadium, baseball games are great, but then that's even better too. Like, that pace of play has been improved immensely. I remember when people were saying, we don't want the pace of play to switch. It's baseball. This is how it is. I'm not ever going to be upset with a 2-hour and 30-minute game.
No.
I'm never going to be upset with that.
No. And I don't think people are really complaining about it. I mean, they were complaining about it before. Not anymore. I think people saw what it did to the game, and they're enjoying watching baseball again, at least from what I've seen.
It's hard not to.
I mean, yeah, nobody wants to sit in the middle of July when it's 100 degrees at a stadium for 4 hours. You just don't. Get burnt, get killed in the sun. You just don't want to sit there. 2.5 hours is perfectly fine for these fans.
Absolutely. And it becomes just like when you're sitting there for that long, or you understand the pace of play now, and that, like, okay, you're going to take 35 to 45 minutes off of the baseball game. That's a huge just relief, and it's a schedule changer, right? Like, you can do something after a baseball game now.
Yeah.
Like, you can, if you end a 1:00 game at 3:30, you can go do more things. You can go enjoy yourself. And that itself just helps the fan. It helps the person just, create a different schedule, because people have lives, and they're not trying to be at this game until 4:30, then be in traffic. And then all of a sudden now you're in rush hour, and then eventually you're, back home at 7:00, depending on where you live.
Yeah.
And so, sporting events have become an ordeal. But I think it's what I marvel at with sporting events now is how and I say it all the time to anybody that I ever go with, is the size of the production. Like, it's so grandiose now. Like, even as an agent, like when I go to different sporting events and look at players, or even from the youth level all the way up to the professional level, it's such a big to do,
Yeah.
right? Like fields that like kids don't even look at fields that like are a grass infield, but it's just like in the middle of a park. They don't even look at that as like a nice field. Like, I remember when that was like, you've been at places like the Justice Complex, right? Where that to me is like one of the better fields I've ever like seen in like an area.
100%.
But people don't even like that field. Look at where we're at. It's like, if I'm not playing at like a Diamond Nation, or I'm not playing at a Baseball Heaven, that it's not a nice enough field. And like even those fields, they're not even nice enough to be playing for. It's just like kind of a place to play that everyone else does. So it's considered nice at like a base level, but it's not like beautiful. Like you have to go down south, quote unquote, to be able to see those nice fields. And so, and that same thing, like even at the highest level, like you go to a college football game, or you go to an NFL football game, you go to an NBA basketball game, like the gyms, places, and the stadiums and the arenas, it's a full-blown production, man. Like what they do for the fan experience is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's all, everybody, I don't know, everybody seems to treat it as a business, and it is at the end of the day. So everybody's really seems to be investing in the production side and the clips and all the back nine that you have to do. It's not just about going and enjoying the game anymore. It's about all the other theatrics that make you stay, that make you a fan, and that gain traction for other people to see that and want to go to your stadium. So production is,
100%.
is huge
100%.
nowadays. And going back to the pace of play, I'll transition this into life. The pace of play increasing seems to be beneficial for everybody. Do you think that's a cause of the pace of life speeding up? Do you think the pace of everyday life is speeding up? Because I think it is. I feel like it is, but I want to hear somebody else.
Yeah, I do. I do think it is. That's a really good parallel to kind of the differences between sports and, the real world. And I think that things are speeding up for people. I think that we have this quickness that we want to do things in, and there's a lack of patience. And I think that the patient route in life has always been beneficial. I think that, there's no quick money. There's no quick money. There's no the quick money in the term of like, you're going to get rich right now fast, like, and it's going to be sustainable. Like that's going to be the first thing that you do, and it's the last thing that you do, right? And or the job search, right? Like I think people look for jobs and they feel like that's the be all end all, or that's the only job you're ever going to have if you have to have a bad one, right? And so people don't want to take that bad job. So then people don't have jobs, and now everybody's hiring, right? So it's a really kind of an oxymoron where there's so many people who want jobs, but there's so many people who are hiring, but those people don't want the job, right? Because they don't want to because in their quick pace of life, it's like, well, I'd rather just take the job that I can get, but there is no job that you can get right now. So the patience is go take the job that you don't want, right? And so that you could build yourself in the skills and the formalities and all the important things that it takes to get where you're trying to go without compromising your time, right? And so, but in that patience too, it's like, I think, I always look at this too for people who are in affluent areas, people who have money with their families. And, I think that we give a negative connotation to people who have fortune in some way. Like, and this is kind of where pace of life comes in, where I believe people who are affluent and who have families that are well off or have had, hereditary money, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for people. I think it's just how you use it and how you approach it is important, right? So I think you can have a lot of patience when you have things, your patience can increase because, well, if I have a lot of money, if I can stay home at my mom's house or I can stay at my parents' house in some way, I'm able to benefit off that in the long term, for a longer time, well, maybe someone who has to get out of their house at like 21.
That's it.
And then, but they look at that as like, okay, well, I don't want to be living off of these people. It's like, well, you don't have to live off your family if you don't want to. You can use this resource to help build your life if that's what you need to do. But some people, when it comes to getting out fast, those people will look at people with money as if like you didn't deserve that money, you didn't earn that thing, and now they look at me, resent them, and it's like, well, that's not how life works, you know? Because if everybody could choose to stay with their families, have money, build a life, get out of their house whenever they decide to, and get like the perfect house that they decided to get, they would do it. Everybody would do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why is there always this resentment toward those people about things that I think everybody would do if they could?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's that resent that you're talking about. People kind of envy successful people because they think they didn't do what they needed to do or didn't deserve it in a way. Yeah. Saying they came up with money, hereditary money. But I don't know. I think it's just people want, and people don't want to do what they have to do to get there. And
yeah,
especially nowadays with the so-called hustle culture and people like Andrew Tate. I don't want to bring up Andrew Tate, but Andrew Tate.
Give me your thoughts on him.
Bringing that whole wave of the hustle culture, and if you put your head down for 60 days, you'll be the next big thing in life, which is just not feasible. I mean, more than likely, you're not going to do that in 60 days. You're not going to become a global superstar or really succeed in anything in 60 days. My thoughts on Andrew Tate. Look, I agree with some of the things he says. He just puts it in a way that it's hard to agree with. He's very polarizing.
Go on that though, because it's really interesting. It's really interesting you say that, and I think everybody I talk to says something similar to that, but they don't. But it's almost impossible for them to want to admit. But go ahead, because it's really interesting. I want to hear what your thoughts are.
So I have no problem admitting that. I don't want to say majority, but I'd say over. Somewhere in the ballpark between 50 and maybe 65% of the things he says, I can agree with. I think he's got good points. And then I think he has some bad points. He definitely has his bad points. But he just says everything with the utmost confidence and the utmost, I don't know how else to say it, but just polarizing way that it's going to put off a lot of people. So no matter what he says it in a way that it's almost agree with him or you're the enemy. So I take what he says and I subtract how he says it, and I just take at surface level what he's saying, and then I put my own research into it. And I do agree with over half of the things he says, I think, from what I've seen.
You know, I think what I take away from what he is, and he's an excellent. Well, he's a master manipulator in the way that he conveys information. He knows he knows how to say what he wants to say. And that's like 99% of communication. All right. Like if you can say the things you want to say confidently with the intensities and the way that he gets it across to people is so perfect in his way that like it's hard to always just flat out disagree with him. Mm-hmm. That being said, what I kind of picked up by what you said was interesting to me was he says everything so confidently and polarizing. Isn't speaking in confidence like the best thing you could do?
Yeah, it is. But we've got,
you know what I mean? Like, isn't it interesting?
We've entered an age where people kind of say things, and then if they can say it in a way where they have the opportunity to leave themselves a backdoor exit, they'll leave themselves a backdoor exit. He doesn't leave himself a backdoor exit. He says things, and he stands
on everything. Yeah, he stands in it all. He stands on everything he is saying, and he is firm in his belief, in which I think I always, right or wrong or indifferent, I think I love that, and I always respect it. I just more so respect everything that he says because he's saying it from a more confident place. It doesn't mean I agree with it, but I can always respect it. And like, I think that some of the things that he does say, it seems like he's a very good self-monitor. Like he understands himself. He understands the world around him. And I think that that's also something important for people who want to be powerful, right? You don't have, in his world, excuse me, his world is much different, more financially beneficial, and it's also much more captivated than ours, right? Like we get to do this, and right now our audience is small, but as it continues to grow, the words we say, we're going to have to continue to monitor. And I think that he understands that his words are so valuable that he's going to continue to get on platforms or use his platform to say what he needs to say, that gets across his message, even if he knows that it's slightly salacious or it's slightly more polarizing, like you said. He knows how to say it to people, which is always going to get his right message across, which is he does want people to succeed. You know, he wants people to do, and there's a formula to success. I think that that's the part that people are so hung up on when they say, when he says things, is that there is a formula to being successful as a man. Right? And to getting there, it's to take care of yourself, you know, make sure you prioritize, you know, your faith, make sure you prioritize your health, make sure you're eating properly, make sure you're having respect for women. I don't know if he does. I can't say he does or he doesn't, because if he didn't, based off of his allegations, that he should still be in jail. I don't know why he's not, but that is another story for another day.
Yeah.
But I'm only looking at what I'm looking at, right? I'm only looking at what I'm seeing, and that he is a free man, and he is still going on platforms, and nothing has truly happened to him yet. So in the event that it does, my opinion will change.
Right.
But nothing's happened. So far, he's a free man, and he can do what he wants.
Yeah.
So clearly there's something here. You know what I mean? Like there's something in his argument that makes sense. So, you know, it's an interesting thing when we look at him. I think he's an interesting guy. He's a fascinating guy because did you see his interview that he had with the therapist?
The therapist.
He had a therapist that he was with. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a really, really good therapist. You got to watch that conversation because I actually showed it to a couple of my girlfriends, and I always try to get their opinions on him because I don't listen to him for his information. I listen to him for information in general.
Yeah.
Right. I don't listen to it because I think that he says something right or better than others. But I just always am fascinated at hearing people who are like deemed crazy or deemed that he's on like the hero's path. You know what I mean? And those hero's path people are really fascinating to me. Like a Jocko Willink, I think, is somebody like me who's like he's on the hero's path of like getting to the truth, learning how life works, teaching people the way that if you wake up in the morning and you do all the right things, you can get to that like promised land, whatever that promised land is for you. And I think that those things are interesting to listen to those people because they sound different than others.
Yeah.
You know, they sound different than the common man.
Yeah.
And their intensity for life is so much different. And like the way that they do things and the way that they drive themselves and the confidence that they speak, you know, then like that's something that we all gravitate to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's funny when people try to de-gratify themselves or take away their appreciation for them.
Yeah.
You know, isn't this so interesting? Like we try to take away our appreciation for confident people. We don't want people to be confident.
No, and that's what makes them so great is because they're not going to fold to those people that want them to de-escalate or become less confident. They're confident in their ability to live their life the way they're living it, and they've become uber successful because of it. Like Jocko, like Andrew Tate, like Jordan Peterson. Everybody calls him crazy. I feel uber successful people all have one thing in common: everybody calls them crazy. So whatever
Yes. Yeah.
whatever you have to
Yes.
do to be called crazy, you're usually doing something right. Not necessarily, maybe not right, but you're doing something that other people see and are, like you said, gravitating to. So whatever that may be, you're usually called crazy. And
Yep.
it's very interesting to see, because there's not many of those people, and which is why it makes them such an outcast in life.
You need to have, if you're trying to get to a level of success and I've learned this along the way from really successful people, really important people in how culture or sports or anything that you're trying to do, if you're trying to change the world in some way, you have to have some unrealistic expectations. If you don't have unrealistic expectations and trying to be like super successful, Dan Orlovsky was saying this about the Jets the other day on ESPN radio. And then he was having a conversation with Michael Kay saying, the DJ Reed, the quarterback for the Jets, was talking about that our defense could be historic. And that he said the 85 Bears or the Legion of Boom, like, don't you think that's a little much? And he said, if you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to have unrealistic expectations. And you have to have the expectation be so high in the air, and like, if you reach it, you did exactly what you need to do. So like, my expectations for my company, my expectations for myself as a performance coach, and my expectation, like, I want to be the best at all of those things. And to be the best at all those things, your level of expectation has to be like, my expectations are to be a 9-figure man.
Yeah.
At the least 9 figures. Like, and yeah, does that sound insane? Yeah, of course it's insane. How many things have to go right for me to get to that level? Like, there's so many things that have to be perfect. And like, you have to catch a little bit of luck, almost a lot of luck, honestly. You have to have a ton of skills, and then you have to be undeniably great at something. And that's like kind of the triangle. It's like undeniably great, lots of luck, lots of skills. And like, if you can marry those three things together in that triangle of success, like, you're probably going to see things happen well.
That's it.
And that's a part of, and then in between those things on those paths, you have to be smart, right? You have to be smart. You got to sacrifice. And to get to those places, you also have to be able to tell your message along the way, which is why I do believe social media does have a ton of benefits in life. And I think that some people are starting to see the benefits and some people aren't.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, I think the people who are living a life that's very egocentric or not gratifying for themselves, like, they're not loving life the way that they should, is because they're seeing a vision that's maybe not realistic for them, so they feel like it's not realistic for anybody. You know what I mean? Like, there's an aspect of, I think, women go through on social media where they feel like, if I'm not gonna look, if I'm not gonna be 115 pounds with a 6-pack abs, a big butt, and all the things that make me feel like I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, then like, I'm never gonna get there. It's like, well, your expectations may not be set there.
Yeah.
Right? Your expectations may not be there. There's so much sacrifice, right? You gotta have a good skill to get there, which means you have to have a level of discipline. You know, also have a little bit of luck of timing and things that happen for you that make a lot of things go, especially like in the MMA world for you right now, right? To become a black belt, you're gonna need to beat some people and show people that you can do certain things. And yeah, sometimes that's luck based off of how that person feels that day and how you feel that day.
Yeah.
Right? That's luck. At the end of the day, like, and that's more so probability. Like, probability is a part of that luck, where like, if you think you're going to do something well, you probably will. You can give yourself a better opportunity and a better probability of doing it well. So like, talk to me about that, like, from the success triangle, right? Think about that for a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of points there that were very interesting to hear you talk about. That triangle was very interesting. I never really put it all together. Like, you can be skilled, but you can be pretty unlucky. There's a lot of unlucky people that are some of the most talented in this world that never got the flowers that they maybe deserved because things just didn't fall their way, and that's just life sometimes. That was very interesting. I think I don't know who said it. I was thinking about it while you were talking about this whole idea of luck, and someone said it that luck is just a generation of putting the work in and doing things the smart way, and then luck is ultimately what you make it. I don't know. I'm split on that because part of me wants to agree that you make your own luck, and then part of me is like, well, life also has its own ideas, and sometimes it's just not your fate or destiny to do something, and that's a part of that luck idea. So I don't know how I feel about that. I forget who said it, but I wish I remembered. But that was something I was thinking about when you were talking about luck. Yeah,
it's tough.
It's hard tough because then you were talking about the women nowadays with these unrealistic expectations of social media and the pros and cons of social media, being able to see these other people be so successful. You're like, well, I can be that successful if this person's being that successful. Or you can take it in the fashion like you were talking about where I'm never going to look like her. So what am I doing? I got to go buy go buy my body and buy all these fake things to be that person. And ultimately you're not, because if you're buying your body in the way of just plastic, it's just not going to work out. I mean, it might.
And it can, because it's the ability to be able to do that is an option, which is nice. And like, people can, if you can afford it.
Goes back to that hereditary wealth. If you have it,
why can't you do it, right? Why shouldn't you do it to help enhance whatever you're trying to enhance? And that's a good thing. It's just, there's something gratifying, I think, for the human mind and for the person, that when you get to go and work out and do the thing that you need to do, it's not that you can't still do that even and work out, but like, you give yourself a better opportunity, you give yourself a better chance to be able to make things easier on yourself. And it's just an overall health thing, right? It's like, at least from that perspective, right? From what we're talking about now with unrealistic expectations, like, I think that women have it a little bit easier in that realm where they can go get the plastic surgery, and guys are doing it too. Like, guys are getting these things done for themselves, and that's an important thing to kind of distinguish. It's happening on both sides. That being said, it is a really overwhelmingly more prevalent thing that women are doing. So, but that being said, like, there's nothing like seeing the progress. That to me is like everything. That to me, I think the progress you get from being able to accomplish that is like important. And like, once you handle that progress in the right way, it's an awesome situation to see.
It is. And just going back, I would compare the women's plastic surgery to men's steroids. That's kind of the comparison I would put. Like, you could take steroids, and if you don't work out, it doesn't mean anything, because it's just not gonna work out if you don't lift or do those things to help. Just like plastic surgery, like, you can get the plastic surgery, but if you're still not working on yourself and working on looking better, then there's not much point to it. So it goes both ways. That was just a comparison I made. I don't know if you want to pivot or keep on that subject.
Let's pivot.
I wanted to talk about hip hop music for the entirety of our episodes, because I can go on for 3 hours about hip hop and
let's do it.
Just the GOATs. And I know you're a music guy. You're kind of well versed in all music.
I am. Yes.
I'm more of a I stay in my lane, so to speak. I try and venture out.
Okay.
But what I like is what I like. And so I kind of stick in the hip hop realm. I got to hear your top 5, dead or alive, greatest of all time hip hop artists ever.
All right. It's a difficult one, and I think that my criteria for me.
Should we start with that? Should we start with criteria before we give our lists?
Yeah, you could start
What's
with criteria.
your criteria?
I'll kind of give you the way I look at it. Not even necessarily criteria, but the way I look at it. And I think the way I look at it for me is, and for any music person who's out there, like, give yourself a criteria when you're talking about some of these things. Like, at least an understanding as to why you do these. You pick the people you pick. And for me, I pick people based off of what I was able to listen to in its time. Now, obviously, you can go back and listen to people, and you can, but I didn't grow up in certain eras. So, like, I can't say, for me, it's hard to say Biggie and Tupac. Only because, not that I don't listen to them, not that I didn't listen to their music, but, like, I wasn't around for that time. I wasn't listening to music at that time. So, like, I started listening to music probably when I was around, like, 6, 7 years old. So, like, and understanding the music, understanding sound, and understanding sonics and cadences and things like that that gravitated to me, which was essentially the catchiness, right? Like, that's what you pick up on when you're a kid. And then as you grow up, like, you get formative years, music changes. You listen to certain people, and those things start to kind of form the way you look at music and, like, how it's supposed to kind of sound. And then you move into a different area, and then you move into a different area, and then you start listening to different music that's around you because of maybe a different town that you live in, predominantly white, predominantly Spanish, predominantly black. Like, people will learn things along the way, and now we're in a place where you listen to music based off of what you can consume as quickly as possible on a streaming service. So, that being said, like, you're getting fed so much different styles of music, which is a great thing if you're interested in a lot of music. But some people still do like to sit with albums. People still do like to sit with an album that they heard 6 months ago and then go back to it, and they're continuously listening to it. Now it's really difficult to still do, because by the time you listen to last week's album, there's a new one coming out from somebody else. And so the years hitting you over the head. Music is kind of like in the content game, right? Like, you may have not even gotten through a podcast yet before the next one comes out. And so it's a little difficult, but so that's kind of where I look at music. It's like, I wasn't in that era, and a lot of the things changed. So my top 5, I would say, and a lot of this is in no order. I'm going to say Drake, J. Cole. I don't put Kendrick in there. Although I do love Kendrick. I'll say Kanye's in there. Jay-Z's in there. And I want to give probably Wayne.
Love that. I love Wayne. I love that. He's in mine.
5 based off of timing of music that I started listening. What resonated with me as early as, like, probably 10 years old of listening, 10 to 11 years old of listening to rap, because I have older brothers who were listening to rap before I was. And once I got influenced in the way that music was, and I started listening on my own, and we went through eras. Like, I think you didn't even go through some of the eras that I went through. Like, we went through the LimeWire and FrostWire era. And then we went through the DatPiff and LimeWire and FrostWire era, Apple iTunes era, and then we went through Apple Music, SoundCloud, Pandora, like all of that stuff where you started to get to things. And I was just in the middle of the era of getting the album in the plastic, go on your bike to Walmart to go pick up the album, come back, put it in your CD player, put it into your car, the 2004 Sienna. Like, that was the way that we did things. Now it's so fast and it's in your file already. So now the differences of music has changed. The way we consume it has changed. So I'm also who should be in my top 5, but I would say he's probably based off the music he's making now that I'm not super in love with, but I was in love with his music, was Kanye. Kanye was in my top 5. I would put him in my top 6, only because just from a consistency level, he's always been excellent, but his music hasn't always gravitated for me lately. And neither has Wayne, right? Like, Wayne hasn't put out like a ton of music lately
I not a ton, but what he's putting out right now is arguably some of his best. I gotta be honest.
And he always does reinvent himself, and he does put out music that I think it shakes the world up for that moment, which is good. But he's a guy who was used to making real albums. He would take you away. If you would go away for 2 to 3 years, give you a real project, and you'd sit with it for 3 to 6 months until he went on tour. And that was the difference, right? It's like that was a different type of what what music was. Another guy who I would put in my top 10 from just like growing up with the music and like watching the growth of this person would be, nobody says this guy, but 2 Chainz. Like 2 Chainz is the guy for me that like, he took me from parties to like the music that was, a little bit more introspective to, he's been with every one of your favorite artists making music. Like, if you put in like, and especially now, I don't look at the top 10 as somebody who like has to be so lyrically engaging every time. I'm just looking at what I love about the music and what I think transcended and helped me form my life musically. Like, he was a guy who I would say he's in my top 10 or 15. Like, I love 2 Chainz music. I think that he was a guy who helped us grow up, who else? Wale helped us grow up. I learned a lot about life listening to Wale, and you should, if you're listening to the music the right way, in my opinion. Like, I think you're supposed to learn something from your artist. But if you're looking at top 10 artists, like, that's a whole other conversation. But let me listen to you. What's your top 5 or top 10?
I take a wildly different approach, I think, than you do.
Okay.
Because I just, the way I've come up and listen to music is just probably different than you did. You like what resonates with you and what you connect with, which I do too. I love it. It's just a lot of what I listen to and what I like to listen to audibly, I don't resonate with. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say I relate to Tupac and Biggie talking about what they talk about. Right. I just don't. But I still love their music. And if you weren't around in that area, I'm younger than you. I wasn't around in that area, obviously.
No, for sure.
But that's what I like to listen to, and that's what I've always listened to. I'm a big lyricism guy. That's a lot of my, not a lot of my criteria, but that's definitely on my criteria.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to you and putting names in my head. I have about 15 in my head right now, so we'll see what top 5 comes out first. All right, top 5 dead or alive. I'm going not in any order because I don't know. I don't have an order. Maybe I'll put them in order. Nas.
Okay.
I'm going Nas. I'm going Biggie. I'm going Eminem.
Okay.
I'm going Black Thought.
Okay.
And I'm going number 5. I'm going. I have to go Wayne. I have to.
Yeah, I like it.
And I was on the fence with Wayne, and then Big L would probably be top 10. Big L, Fat Joe. Before everybody knows Fat Joe for his big hits, but he made some banger albums.
He did. He made some good albums. Terror Squad and that whole era of him and Remy was a good era to be a part of. But like, it's so interesting when you say those guys, because like, what makes you gravitate to those guys?
Dude, I don't know. I don't know. I just started listening to them, and it's just stuck. Like, I'll listen to the new age of, like, who do we got in the new age? We got Benny the Butcher and those guys, Griselda.
Love Griselda.
I'm not a huge fan. My brother is a huge fan of them, and I just don't.
I think they have their own unique style that I think nobody else is doing. And like, it sounds old school, but it's very new school as well, which is like, it's hard to kind of put the two together and do it gracefully. And I think they do it gracefully. Like, I think Westside Gunn is one of my favorite rappers right now. I love the style. I love the lifestyle and the culture aspect, which is like, I think what is important in discuss music is like culture. And music drives culture, fashion drives culture, And like, if you can put the 2 or the 3 together in some way, I think you end up becoming an icon, right? And like, that is a lot of that's where Jay-Z comes in, right? Jay-Z was one of the first people who start putting things together when it came to the fashion side, to also the music, and rapping about it in a way that sounded slick and those sounded fun and engaging, right? I think Drake is a icon in that particular way as well. I think he does a really good job of basically making people do things inside the culture that like you're not used to doing, right? That like, he shifts it, he moves it around because of his name, the way that he does, the way that he looks, and I think that's an interesting part. I think, what are the reasons you listen to certain guys, and what kind of effect have they had when it comes to music?
Yeah, and I wish I had a good answer, but to be honest, I'm thinking about it. A lot of what I enjoy listening to is the storytelling, the beats. I'm a big beats person. If I don't like the beat, it's going to be hard for me personally.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of who I didn't put on the list. Kendrick Lamar I didn't put on there. Jay-Z I should have put on there.
Well, I don't know if you should have, right? And like, that's
okay, maybe not should have, but I didn't put on. They're in my top 10 for sure.
Yeah, and I think, and that's what's cool about creating a top 10. Like, I think obviously top 10s, there's some things that are objectively right about top 10s. Like, I think Jay-Z needs to be in everybody's top 10. Like, if Jay-Z is not in everybody's top 10, then like, you can't make a rap list. You know what I mean? Like, you literally can't make a list without him not being in the top 10. Like, I think everybody else in between that, I think Jay-Z, Eminem, Biggie, and Tupac within the top 10, then I just don't think you understand rap. Like, I think that you've lost the identity. You don't know anything about it. But
there's just so many names, like Lupe Fiasco. I've been listening to him a lot lately. I probably would have put
what he did, right? Think about who Lupe was to us. Like, Lupe made about 3 to 5 songs, including Superstar, that when he put that out, like, it changed the way that we looked at music. It changed the sound. It was a different sound, but it was so, like, when Superstar came out, when Good Life came out by Kanye, like, that that upgraded the way that we kind of listened to music. You know what I mean? And like, that made things sound a certain way. And like, that part of it was important to when we were just starting to form our understanding of what music was. Like, I remember that, 6th or 7th grade for me? Like, that was 2010. Like, when you think about him making some music at the time, and Kanye was already big, but then he made a song that was undeniable. It had this perfect sound, and that was when singles were real. Like, that was when, like, putting a single out, he played that for like months before the album, and that was the song you had to gravitate to. Trent, my brother and I were just talking about it yesterday, about SZA. Like, SZA is pop music, but they look at her as R&B, and like, she's an R&B act. I would say she makes more alternative R&B, but she makes pop music. And that is what's popular, and that's why I think like certain people trend differently than others when it comes to the culture, right? Because SZA herself is also culture, and I think that's where like rap comes into play when it comes. It's bigger than that, you know what I mean? Like, Taylor Swift is culture for the white girls, right? Like, she's culture. Like, what she does, how she may dress, how the other girls made, how she affects the way things change. That is why I believe that like part of any rap conversation, you have to look at the way those people have affected culture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
you saw it. I specifically just talking about the rap culture, and people were dressing how all these top rap guys were dressing in the late 90s, early 2000s, even 2010s going on. They were embracing the culture, like, and doing the things that these guys were doing because it was just bigger than just the music itself. And that is very apparent with today's Taylor Swift, like you said, and that's just the trend that is going. It's more than just music. So I think that's definitely in consideration when naming some of the biggest artists nowadays, is how do they affect the world? Not even just, one culture or one location. How do you affect everybody? And how do you make a difference and change the culture and people follow you for what you do?
Right.
Because that's how you get, an impact in this music industry, at least in my opinion. I think being able to affect that many people is showing how good you are at something.
Right. And what's interesting about the rap conversation too is that people's top fives are going to be based off their region. Right? Like your top five is usually going to be based off of, like, think about all the people you just named. Like most of the guys you just named are all were based out of the Northeast.
A lot of East Coast boys.
And it's a lot of, outside of Tupac, like, think about where rap started. Obviously, that they just did the Hip Hop 50 Festival over at Yankee Stadium. Like, that tells you something, right? That tells you where a lot of rap started and where it started to gravitate to, and and they obviously have West Coast artists there too. There's a massive influence there. But then what about the guys in Texas, right? Like if you listen to a Houston, and there's a certain sound in Houston, there's a certain sound in Atlanta, there's a certain sound in Detroit, right? Where like you got Eminem, Big Sean, Babyface Ray, Royce da 5'9", and then you go to Atlanta, and then Atlanta is, I mean, you take it back to Gucci Mane, to Juvenile, to, Young Thug, Gunna, and then you go to Memphis now. There's Moneybagg Yo, Young Dolph, Key Glock, Yo Gotti. Like there's movements in all of these different places. So like I think if you talk to an Atlanta guy, that person would say, nah, none of those guys are in my top five. Maybe some of them, but like they're gonna look at what their culture is there, right? And so that's what's so interesting about the debate is like, unless you're trying to hit all of the areas that have affected the world, like if in your for especially like an artist perspective, right? Like if you're artist of top like 20 ever artists in like hip hop and R&B, like if Nelly's not in your top 10, then we can't have a conversation. Just from like fully controlling some of the culture. Like let's talk about Air Force Ones. Like everybody started wearing Air Force Ones. Like think about that conversation. Like think about what we're doing there. Like the Gucci Mane. Like if Gucci Mane ain't in your top 25, 30 artists, like the way that they shifted culture, it doesn't always have to be the music either. Like Gucci Mane didn't have anything that was like super introspective. Jeezy didn't have a ton of things that were like, Jeezy had a lot of introspective stuff, but most of these guys are drug rappers, right? Which is in that realm, that's what people listen to. And that's part of because that was part of the fabric. That was part of what people could gravitate to, not only from like, where they were located, but also other people inside their cities could understand that particular struggle or plight or whatever it may be. And sometimes it's just super fly to listen to that type of stuff too. Like Buffalo's got a movement now. Like you talk to anybody from like upstate New York, they might look at West Side Gun or Benny the Butcher as like their top 5 rappers ever. Right? So it's kind of like culture will shift that, and like also the timing of those things too. You talk to a Philly rap, you talk to anybody from Philadelphia, Meek Mill is their guy. He's their guy. Like it's Meek Mill, it's Big L, it's Freeway, guys like that, and who you can feel it when you listen to them. You can put yourself in that place. You can put yourself in Philadelphia, right? Yeah. Tory Lane. When I listen to Free Tory, if that's that's where everybody's at. I don't know where you're at with Tory Lanez, but yeah, we can get into that one day.
Yeah, we could talk about
it. My brother and I talk about it every single time. When I get down to Miami, I travel to Miami a decent amount for work, for different things. Whenever I get to Miami, I always listen to Tory Lanez. Why? Because he makes me feel like I'm in Miami. Right? And so but I don't know if I could put Tory in my top 10. I don't know if I could put Tory in my top 20. I love Tory Lanez, but it doesn't mean like he makes that culture move, right? When you go to Toronto, put on Drake and Party Next Door at the weekend, you'll feel like you're in Toronto. right? And you'll understand how they could create that type of music. So it called the conversation is very nuanced. And so like when we have criteria, we need to really get into it with criteria to know like if you're covering all the bases. Oakland, E40, those guys, right? Like Too Short, way different type of music, but like it's culture, right? Like,
yeah, and culture. I love that. I love this conversation. I love talking about it because like I listen to a lot of hip hop music. I listen to a lot of music in general. Hip hop would be my number one most listened probably genre. Yeah. But
I'm an R&B guy.
I know you are. I know you are because I've been around you enough when you have music on that you're a big R&B guy. I know you are.
Huge R&B guy.
It's just because every time I have one of these conversations, I something new comes out of it that I think about, that I take with me that I didn't have before. And there was a lot of information there. And when I watch this back, I'll probably think about something different.
It's like insane to me to make like a top 10 if you haven't fully listened to all of like the regions of music. Like if you don't listen, and you don't have to actively be listening to it, but like if you haven't been able to fully understand and either appreciate or deny the types of music out there, it's very difficult to have that perspective because it's like, yeah, like you could put your top 10 and have 7 rappers from New York because you live here, right? Like you live in this general area, but then it's like, you don't even know what they were doing in the West Coast. Like, and you don't even know how that affected the music over there. Like numbers are numbers. I'm more so looking at impact, right? Like impact on the way it feels like the impact, for example, like the impact that like PB Rock had, right? God rest his soul. The impact that like PB Rock had in Philadelphia, like at every Philly school when he put out the remix to, what was those Sway Lee and French Montana song?
Oh, I know it. I know
the song.
I know it. Man.
Unforgettable.
There,
like the remix when he put that out, the way that affected Philadelphia when I was at that time, like when I was out there, was unparalleled to any. Like you heard that at any club, any bar, that turned the place up, and that's where you got to get to, right? You'll start to understand a little bit more about the music side when you're outside, right?
Yeah,
you're not outside yet, but once you get outside, you're gonna understand the difference. Like that's where you hear certain things and how it impacts the people, right? And you don't always have to hear it outside. Sometimes you can hear it and you'll know, like, okay, this song's undeniable. Like, you can hear things outside, bro. Like, it's a different feeling. Like, oh, I see what this is doing to people, right? I see how this is affecting the universe. When Sticky came out with Drake and like when he put out Honestly Nevermind, people didn't like the album initially. But when you heard Sticky or Massive, you're like, okay, like this is going to be one of those songs. Then you hear it in the club and you're like, wait, this is one of those songs. Like I know this song now. And the way it affected people when you were out, like you see the way where people gravitate to, and it's just like that's all other like music theory conversation too, from like sonics and all that stuff. We can get in.
We can you can keep it going all day long with music, man. And I listened for a lot of that because you were just going, and I didn't want to ruin you had a flow.
Yeah, man. Listen, I can get into music for hours, bro. I can get into music for hours. Just like the concepts of it, the way that people look at it, the perception of culture and part of music, and like people not also giving certain cultures credit. And like specifically from the race aspect, right? Like I think that's a whole other conversation we'll get into, and like I want to get into that, but different people not giving credit to where the music came from, because it's open for everybody, it's open to the public. So I do want to have that conversation one day. But
I'm all in for that conversation because I have my own thoughts and my own questions that I'm gonna spit, and you have yours, and
we'll wrap about
it. Perfect. We're approaching an hour. I mean, I think that's a good place for us.
Yeah, we smoked
this. This was a good video. You guys will be able to see us if you choose. It'll be on Spotify. It'll be on all those things. But if you want to watch us on YouTube, you'll see it on YouTube, and you'll be able to see us.
Live.
Episode 3. Is this episode 3?
4?
We keep. It's 3 or 4. I know we have 2 out. I don't know if we have 3 out.
No, I think we have a third though. We have a third. I think it's on that on the drive.
I'll check it. I don't know. It's episode 3 or 4.
This could be 3. This could be 4. We'll call it 3 for now.
And whatever it is, you'll see it up. But like, comment, subscribe, do what you got to do. List your top 5 that are alive in the comments. I want to hear top 5s, top 10s, whatever you got. That's been another episode of A Puncher's Chance. And we'll see you in the next one. Probably in a different environment because we're always going to be changing. But
we're changing it up. We're everywhere, right?
That's why you guys are here.
Place. It might be yours. We might be in a basement somewhere. We might be on an island somewhere. You guys never know. So when it comes out, like, view, subscribe. That's Puncher's Chance.
We appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it, guys.